live. Live and direct, you're tuned into the Diallo Show, broadcasting straight out of the sanctuary of hypocrisy that is the city of Chirac, state of Illinois. This is Diallo. Sorry about the super late start. Won't happen again. But, things happen, but we're going to navigate and push through. And I don't hear myself. Is my mic live? Can y'all hear me in your headphones?
Very faintly.
I can hardly hear you.
Can y'all hear me now? No.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Y'all can hear me now?
yes.
Yes.
Then that kills my feed. Okay, can y'all hear me now? Can y'all hear me now? But y'all can hear me now.
Yes.
I don't know what's up with that. But not now?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry. A lot of confusion. Probably Mossad. Anyway.
Could be.
Yeah. Okay. So the
I
Mossad
mean, they know that I'm here.
right. The Mossad is tampering with our boards this morning. I think. I'd like to imagine. I still can't hear myself in my headphones. But let's proceed. We're going to talk about Africans abroad, black people from the United States making a way in lands beyond and above, and the trials, tragedies, and triumphs of trying to get beyond the systems and institutions of global white domination and empire, and what options are available to us and what outcomes can we expect or experience throughout that. So in the studio I have Dr. Mingo and Sister, what is your Hebrew name?
No, I just have one name, Nicole.
It's just Nicole?
Yeah, Nicole Scott.
Why didn't you adopt a Hebrew name?
I just didn't. I never had a desire to.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys. That's just for my own personal edification.
Okay.
That's not relevant to the show.
Okay.
But now I'm going to turn it over to you and Dr. Mingo, two black mothers raising black sons and trying to navigate the best way.
And a daughter.
And a daughter. There's 7 black sons and 1 daughter between the two of you.
No, 6. You
I have four. I have 4
boys.
sons.
There's 6 sons and
one
one
daughter.
daughter, 7 total between the two of you.
Yeah.
So I
like phrasing it.
Oh,
It
wait,
makes
your
me
mic's
feel like
dead.
I did more of my part.
Okay. Okay, I think they can hear y'all now. They didn't hear anything you said before that.
Oh, pity.
I
hope
said
they
some
can hear you now.
profound
Hold on.
things. I can't hear myself. Now I can.
I
Okay.
can hear you. Oh, I can hear myself
All
as
right.
well.
Oh, now.
Now talk directly into the mics. Even when you're talking to each other, talk directly to the mics.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's start off. Introduce yourselves, starting with you, Nicole, and then you, Dr. Mingo, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, my name is Nicole Scott. I'm currently residing in Israel, where I've been for the last 15 years.
Directly, I thought you said you spoke loud. Can
I
you-
think that I am speaking very loud.
No, you want to
Okay.
speak directly, like
Okay,
get up on the mic.
so
Sorry.
my name is Nicole Scott.
There you go. Doesn't that sound better?
I currently reside in Israel, where I have been for the last 15 years. I'm the proud mother of 5 children, 4 sons and a daughter. Thus far, I think that's probably my greatest accomplishment in life.
Every mother says that. Okay, but we'll take your word
I don't
for
think
it.
so. I don't think so.
You don't think every mother says that?
Her greatest accomplishment is being
Yes.
a mother? No. In fact, I work with quite a few women that do say differently.
Mm-hmm.
What's your greatest accomplishment, Dr. Bingo?
I mean, well, since she said
That's what I said. Every
But
but
there's
no,
no
I'm not
pressure,
saying
no.
it's not true. I'm just
But I am saying
identifying the
that
commonality of.
No,
of
I work with several women that did not want to become mothers. It was actually their husbands who pressured them into having children. And they ask me all the time, "Oh, Nikki, how do you do it with 5 children? I'm struggling with my 1. I'm struggling with just 2." And they don't think. In fact, their greatest accomplishments they would think would be the work that they do at our job.
Okay.
Oh, see, for sure, not my job. Now that I give it a touch of thought, I think my greatest accomplishment is the embrace of an African ideology. Because without that, it's true. that was difficult to do. I mean, you're talking to somebody who was wanted to be a model and an actress and had some very superficial ideas about how I was going to pursue my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so negating that in the acceptance of an African ideology and a Pan-Africanist perspective.
You're not speaking directly into the microphone.
Negating a standard American kind of way of being in favor of an African identity is my greatest accomplishment, which enables me to be a better everything. It enables me to be a better mother, a better teacher, a better daughter, a better sister, friend, whatever. Because without that perspective, I think I could be very lost and I could be confused and just kind of adrift. So I think that might be my greatest accomplishment because it's not easy. It's not easy to get there and it's not easy to stay there.
So and that's an excellent point because I think that all things start with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
For sure.
So you stole her greatest accomplished mother comment. So then
I
you
didn't
had to
steal
make
it.
up.
There's no theft here. We're comrades, isn't that right, Sister Erica?
He likes.
I'm just saying,
listen, it's not a competition; it's a
It
cooperation.
ain't. Thank you. Come on, come through, sisterhood. Come through.
Okay.
It's all love.
All right. Moving on from there, being greatest accomplishment, motherhood, greatest accomplishment, watching some Umar tapes and awakening.
Better than you
on YouTube. Okay. Now that that's out of the way,
his beard's better than yours.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we get into the meat of the topic in terms of
the tofu of the topic?
Yeah.
I prefer to use.
Well, actually, meat. If you go to the Old Testament, in Genesis.
But we're gonna stay away from the Bible today.
If you go to Genesis, meat is the flesh of fruit.
But we're gonna stay away from the Bible today.
And it said,
Aren't
eat
you
there
an
of the
atheist?
fruit, and then that could be the meat.
Okay,
I'm not an atheist.
But I'm also literate. I can read words that are written in any text.
Okay, but we're gonna stay away from that today.
All right.
Aren't we?
So I'm just saying, biblically, meat is the flesh of fruit.
Okay, so before we get into the protein of the conversation.
Do we want to have anything else in terms of, okay, we've established that you're both mothers. We've established that you think your children may be listening, so you're talking about how
my children are for sure not listening.
The children are the future.
Yeah, I'm sure that my children are like for sure not listening as well. I'm sure they're probably outside in the
I thought
house.
your children listen because they say disparaging things about me on the air.
They've never said disparaging things about your brother Diallo, and I wish you would stop saying that.
One of your sons says that I sound like a white man on the radio.
Oh my God, he's like an elephant. You just do not let
That's
things
not
go.
a disparaging comment. I don't take that as a compliment.
Okay, but you know what? In his reality, and he wasn't saying it in a disparaging way. He wasn't saying that to denigrate you. He was saying from his experience, his short-lived experience of being on the earth 10 years, okay, that from all of his encounters, that you sounded like a European person. It wasn't anything negative and it wasn't a slight against you. So can we please bury that?
Yeah, when I talk to him directly, when I hear from him directly.
Okay.
He got beef now. It's just no way around it until they squash it one-on-one.
We
you got
squash
beef?
It.
Look,
listen.
Beef is when the working people can't find jobs.
I got Saitan. Are you trying to quote Mos Def? Okay, moving on. Beyond that, so that's all the intro you want to give. That's all you want to tell the audience before we go into the main issue of the topic.
Well, I would just like to say, since I'm on air, that I've had a wonderful time here in Chicago.
You can't say that. I start my show, every show, saying I'm broadcasting straight out of the city of Chirac, the state of Illinois.
I feel like I live with this daily.
Was there anything else that I would like to say?
You just have to let it happen to you, Nicole. You just have to let it
well, here we keeps it we keeps it real. This is not the Chicago Tourism Board. We keeps it real.
I was keeping it 100.
I say.
Matter of fact, I was keeping it 150.
This is the city of
extra.
This is the city of Chirac in the state of Illinois. So you can't be talking about picking daisies and frolicking on the lake shore.
Wasn't nobody talking about picking daisies.
She said she had a good time. She got her hair braided. That's black.
You know what I'm saying? What about I was speaking about the experience that I had yesterday evening when all of the, the friends, the people who love me came
strugglers, freedom fighters, revolutionaries,
skateboarders,
radicals.
So this how we gonna do this?
I'm just saying, this is a safe space for keeping it real.
and I'm keeping it all the way through.
Okay.
That's
okay.
the only way I know how to keep it.
All right, going back. Okay,
That's
you're
the only
having a
way I know how
good
to keep
time
it.
as we suffer in Chicago. You just having a good time as we struggle.
But you know what? You look like
unseat
you
the
didn't
mayor.
look like you was suffering when you was eating that grilled asparagus last night, brother. You didn't look like you was
That's
suffering.
only to fuel my body for further struggle.
Okay, you didn't look
Okay.
like you was suffering when you was sipping
Yeah,
on
we
that
did have
coffee.
a good. Yeah, that was good. Coconut coffee.
Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm. Coconut coffee.
So come on now.
But anyway, yeah, we did have a dinner party. I don't know if that was a welcoming or a goodbye because
More
you're
like it
leaving
was
today.
like right an
This is
exit
goodbye,
because
'cause today's it.
right a farewell party because like I'm
So
leaving
long.
today.
Right. So it was a farewell party, a vegan farewell party, because you're here from outside the United States. Even
I
though you
am.
were born in the United States,
I
you're one of
was.
the Africans that didn't just talk about it, you were about it. Because I hear black folks like, I'm getting out of America. America's racist, America this, woo, 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 I'm leaving.
Mhm.
So that's the main topic. So that's a good segue to talk about Africans abroad.
Mhm.
What are the benefits, the opportunity cost to leaving the United States as an African versus staying here in the belly of the beast in the city of Chirac or anywhere south of the Canadian border,
Mhm.
as Malcolm X told us, was a racist, anti-black, repressive state. And especially being a mother of
Of five.
of five sons,
4 sons.
four
One daughter.
sons, and we were talking about the plight of black males and then a black daughter. And then we have, okay, of course, Dr. Mingo, who's also raising sons on the south side of Chicago. And the you know why, even though we may have the resources or the opportunity to exit, why some people stay to fight it out in the United States, and why some Africans seek greener pastures or take risk to go abroad in order to, find new struggles or find better vantage points to struggle. So I open this up. You can talk about your motivations or your ideas for leaving, where you left to,
Mhm.
and your experience raising African children, African American children,
Mhm.
or as Yvette would call you, a descendant of slaves.
Which I'm not.
Um,
I
raising
am a descendant
descendants
of
of slaves.
kidnapped Africans.
Raising descendants of slaves outside of our plantation,
Confines of
outside
America.
the plantation.
Right.
So
That-
turn it over to you, Nicole.
That's
L.
that's interesting that
Oh.
you framed it that way because I think as an African people there is no safe haven for us on the planet. I think that oftentimes, and I can say this from my own personal experience, I left the United States when I was in my 20s. And I was running from that. I wasn't a mother at the time. I wasn't, I had just become married, I just gotten married. But yeah, I was running from, as you say, the belly of the beast, but I mean, as we evolve in our understanding and our knowledge, the belly of the beast has metastasized, it's global, it's everywhere. So there is no escaping it. And I think that's something that I have experienced and witnessed all too well with rearing my children, my 5 children in Israel. Of course, there are certain things that that my children have been guarded from. There are certain opportunities and experiences they have had as a result of living in Israel. And I think that I would be remiss in not saying that also has come, those opportunities and those experiences have been afforded to them as a result of the direct and brutal oppression of people that not only look like me, but in many ways I identify with me as well. I think that something that's often missed when people speak about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict is there are a lot of black Palestinians, and that even within Palestinian society, like by other Arabs, that they're oppressed as well, which goes back, to the same the one common global ideology is anti-blackness, and so you find that wherever you find that in Israel, there's a racial caste system, and of course sitting at the top are the Ashkenazim Jews. So it's real. It's real wherever we are, which is why I mean the whole idea or concept that that Pan Africanism is dead. It's absolutely ludicrous, because without that, there is nothing else. Because as I stated, there is no safe haven for us wherever we are on this globe.
Okay, let's turn to you, Dr. Mingo. And you also,
How about just Erica?
really?
Mhm.
Okay, fine.
Say
Erica.
her name. Say her name.
Okay, let's turn to you because you also have sons,
Mhm.
and but you live here in the United States, United States, as pronounced by Donald Trump. You live in the United States, and even though you didn't come up in the jacks and the projects in the mean streets, you came up in a affluent, comfortable neighborhood. But now you're raising your sons in Bronzeville on the South Side, and besides the fact that you married a struggler who didn't have really the means to provide better for you, besides that, why would you choose to remain not only in the United States to raise a black children, but also in the community that many people, or which we understand isn't a war zone, but many people try to define as a war zone.
For me, I think it's just important to kind of look at the entire spectrum of our experience from all the way as far back as I can make sense,
Erica.
as far forward as I can make sense. And so I thought about Bronzeville specifically because my parents grew up in this area. My mother went to school in Bronzeville. My father went to school in Bronzeville. My uncle was a principal here. And I felt like it was a decent enough place to kind of stake a claim and struggle from. At any place that I live, I'm not married to Bronzeville. I'm not, I have designs on Nigeria at some point, but I'm not married there. I'm not married to any particular place. I want to engage in the best, most strategic location for Pan African success and for long term revolution and struggle that will ultimately end up in my children not having to be looked at as kind of like, we always talk about on the world stage, black people are the least, or black people are hated, or I mean, like I don't want that to be their context. I don't want other people's fears and inferiorities to define them. And so wherever I can do that work to try to mitigate the damages of other people's feelings of inferiority about my sons, that's where I'm going to stand. I choose Bronzeville, even though there's shootings, even though there's gunfire. It's strategic in terms of land holdings and potential equity for greater economic resources down the line to maneuver better towards a Pan-Africanist solution for black people. And I don't live anywhere based on my choices and the choices that we've made, Yala, are not based on kind of external pressures and what the designs of the external world are, but more based on what our designs, our designs have been moving forward. I consider myself the architect of what is going to look like down the line, and so what any place is enduring in any moment, it only interplays with a strategy for success and rebellion and revolution. It has nothing to do with um, any of my specific desires for anything long term, because the sands are forever shifting, and they should be. And that's an asset for somebody who wants to see the whole change.
I think that really resonated with me what you said about being the architect of it, because I think that's something that, um, and I can only speak from my own personal experience and things that I have witnessed, but I think that that's something that we don't instill in our children, is that they are the architect and that they can choose, the path and that they want in life,
Mm-hmm.
and that we often find ourselves, and I can speak from my own personal experience, find ourselves, in these situations, not really of our own making, that we really didn't place a lot of thought, or forethought into, and then from there trying to navigate our way out of that space, and it's like, you know, instead of sitting down and actually putting, serious thought, and consideration into if I take this step, where will it lead to, you know? versus if I take this path, what will be the outcome?
And it's rare for us as black mothers in particular. So often in this country, one of the major themes is chasing and trying to get out ahead of what the dominant culture wants,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to become that thing and turn our children into that thing so that they can serve the dominant society better to win some sort of favor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the polar opposite of what I want for my boys. In fact, I've said to my students, I've said to my children, you'll never work a job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want my children to work a job, not ever, because it's inherently exploitative. And the designs for their life, their revolutionist ideologies, if I'm fortunate enough for them to embrace them, would be to design their day according to what's necessary to move their people forward
Mm-hmm.
and to create a sense of stability as we roll.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot ever imagine putting my children in any situation to be the belle of the ball for the dominant society and hope that they get selected to dance all night. Like I don't want that for my children. And so when I think about, like, I know a lot of people, like here specifically, I know a lot of my even colleagues, people that I know are very concerned with, the opportunities that are available from the dominant society for their children. And I'm thinking, word, like that's your plan, like to look at the most repressive, brutal, and savage historically society, specifically towards black boys,
Mm-hmm.
and decide I want to please them,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to situate myself in such a way that I can win favor with them, so that I can be comfortable in essence. There's no way to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Not ever. You could be content momentarily, but to get comfortable is to get complacent, like we were talking about before, and potentially um, unravel the designs of the larger idea. He's telling me to speak loud. I'm gonna try.
Okay. Sorry. So, as can we talk about? If people want to know why
What people?
uh, listeners, the people them, they want to know why Israel of all places, in terms of, would you say the conditions here in the United States, which I just would not be a very good tourism advocate
Mm-hmm.
for the United States, because we all know the reality for black people here in the States. But people ask, why Israel as an alternative? And is that your landing point, or is that just another launch pad for your ambitions?
It definitely is not my landing point. Um, my desire has always been to live in Africa. Where in Africa, we've narrowed it down to a couple of different countries right now. My husband and I.
But you ain't coming back home?
My home
To
will
the
be
plantation?
my home will be wherever I make
You're not
it.
coming back to here as a descendant of slaves, as an American, as someone blessed with American citizenship, the coveted American citizenship.
When I
You
was
don't ever plan on relocating back here permanent?
to live, absolutely not. When
Okay.
I was here, I did not feel at home here. I always felt like an outsider. That this was not a place where I belonged.
You took all the racism and oppression personally? I don't think it was personal to
Absolutely. Oh,
to you.
really?
No, sorry.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
why you took it so personal.
Shame on me.
Go
Okay,
on.
my bad. So yeah, so I don't know. Even even as a young teenager, I did not foresee myself living in America. I know just for me, I can only, like I say, speak from my own personal experience, but it always felt like a land of captivity
Yeah.
for me.
It
really
only
did.
felt that way because it was. That's the only reason.
So yeah, Israel was not the choice. It was an option that circumstances at the time led me to Israel.
Did Israel meet your expectations in terms of an alternative, a viable alternative to living in the United States of America?
That's a very difficult question to answer because as an American, even though I am black, I still have the cloak of Americanism that shields me from a lot of things like that. Even Ethiopians, that they are victim of that in Israel. So So it's, I mean, it's a conflicting reality. Um, my personal experience, yeah, in a lot of respects, um, it it has been better. Like for example, my job, like there's a certain amount of freedom and leverage that I have at my job that I know that I wouldn't have working here in the United States.
What are some of the benefits? Like I know that other countries are far more liberal in terms of like time off and maternity leave and stuff
Exactly, like I'm here.
like that. Hmm.
I mean, I'm gone from my job 3 weeks. Um, and it's not like I had to, like beg and plead or whatever. I just simply told my boss that I was going to be gone from these dates.
Hmm.
Um, we have universal health care. Um, I get,
Financed by the United States.
yeah, everything is undergirded by the United States,
Yes.
paid for by your tax
Yes.
dollars. Yes, I'm able to live a comfortable life. um, no, but seriously, yeah, and again, that's the internal conflict that I live with, daily.
I wouldn't be conflicted about it.
Um,
If you got to go to Israel to get your reparations.
Yeah, that's the way I like. I don't know. I don't know. Like we discussed a little bit in the car right here
Mhm.
about
oh, we discussed a lot.
a lot. And so thinking about it, like because in the back of my mind, I initially thought to myself like, how can she live in Israel?
And I get that all the
How
time.
can she and the Palestinians and what a monster? But then I thought to myself, how is that any different necessarily? I mean, you cross some water. But how is that any different than someone who chooses a gated community here
Right.
because
Like
they
Trayvon Martin's parents.
right because well they were looking for some privileges that were uncommon to the larger population and they skirted around and they did some unconventional things and they got themselves there and so I think that it's similar uh, perhaps in Israel. I mean, as a mother, I mean that's the conversation is kind of stemming from motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
There is something that kicks in. Um,
That survival mechanism.
right. When you need to protect babies, there's
Right.
something that kicks in where you might put yourself personally in certain situations, but then it's always like you can, even when you talk about school here in Chicago, everybody's like, well, this is what school system should be. Well, where do your children go?
Right. And so that's the thing, that really enrages me,
Mm-hmm.
is because we find ourselves, in this maze, and each and every one of us, we're all trying to navigate it and survive it to the best of our ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes we find ourselves in direct conflict, with one another, with our allies, out of just the sheer desire to sustain and to survive, you know. I mean, that's why, all of it has to be dismantled, here, Israel, Australia,
Yeah.
wherever.
So, what are some of the expectations that weren't met in moving abroad as a black person, rejecting America, rejecting the racism, rejecting the reality that has been imposed on Africans here? What are some of the specific liabilities or disappointments or expectations that weren't met, as opposed to the benefits that you derived?
So I wouldn't say that it was more so an expectation that wasn't met, but I would say that I was quite surprised at how overtly racist Israelis are.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I mean, like I moved there in 2003. I mean, people have televisions; they're aware that black people exist. But the level of overt racism that I have experienced, and my children as well, and just like the closed-mindedness, it's like Israelis by and large are very just like oblivious, to the racism. I mean, they say some of the most racist things without any consideration. And then when you point it out to them, oftentimes they don't even, not only do they not recognize the error of their ways, but, they don't even see like how it was racist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could write a couple of books, on the things that I have experienced, things that have been said to me by Israelis. That,
One of the most egregious, just for context.
oh God. Um, Once one of my coworkers was saying, and she thought that she was, being generous. She said, I don't see why Israelis don't want Ethiopians, living next to them or learning with their children. I mean, they're not the most intelligent people, but they're good people. And I was like, what do you mean they're not the most? I mean, like, where did you grab that from? Where did you derive the fact that they're not the most intelligent? Um, Israelis, by and large, really believe that Ashkenazim, those are the Jews that come from Europe. They wholeheartedly believe that they are inherently more intelligent than the Mizrahim. Those are the ones that come from Morocco, Iran, Algeria, the North African countries. Um, Once I was at a meeting, it was something that they were having for.
Which is ironic. That's a eugenicist idea that Hitler also extolled.
Exactly.
Right? Doesn't that? I mean, it blows my mind that's.
You'd be
Right,
surprised
but-
how many Nazisms
Right.
that the Israelis brought with them.
Israelis are obsessed with blonde hair and blue eyes. That is something that really tripped me out when I got there. I was like, dang, I mean, he did a number on them. Hitler really.
This predates Hitler. We like to put it on a man. This is what Dr. Marimba Ani would call it
Mhm.
an Isili. This is a fundamental personality and mentality. This is a core cultural trait that was there before Hitler. Hitler didn't make the culture made Hitler. But go on, I'm sorry.
It's okay. But yeah, their obsession with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they think that they really do think that it is superior.
And given that you're a mom,
Have you ever heard of Stalag?
No, I haven't.
You never heard of the Stalag?
I was fixing to ask them.
I'm sorry, but to talk about just to dwell on the issue with the Israeli Nazi connections.
Mm-hmm.
Stalag is the Eastern European term for Holocaust porn, where they have like emaciated women dressed
I'm
like.
familiar with Holocaust porn, but
Oh,
I've never
you
heard that
said-
terminology.
I'm
Stalag.
sorry, I'm not.
What?
Holocaust porn?
Yeah.
It's like all the rage in Israel. Like when they do like the search engine, when they determine, like they find that the racist parts of the United States consume the most ebony or BBC porn, like the black porn is mostly searched. And then you have places like the Mormon Utah, where the Mormons dominate, that are aggressively anti-homosexuals. They consume the highest amount
right.
of gay and lesbian porn. And Israel consumes Nazi and Holocaust porn. It's just so.
Yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu's son dressed up as a Nazi.
Right.
So I mean,
So that's something. But again, these are white people, so how can we question? That's not anything that any real academic would explore or try to suss out. But I'm sorry, but you can.
That's so problematic in terms of just like, I mean, that's one of the things that I've been championing for a long time is this,
Study white folks.
the inquiry. Like
Right.
so much inquiry is steeped around how we survive these kinds of oddities and aggressions,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to studying the actual oddities and aggressions.
Mhm.
And so that's as a psychologist, that's something that I'm definitely interested in and have been pushing towards for a long time. And everybody, it's very taboo. It's very taboo to turn the lens
Mm-hmm.
around. It's just about, and I've said in my classes before, it kind of feels like, Gargamel from the Smurfs is like stomping on, these mushroom houses and squashing, lavish the land as never before, and he's setting things on fire. You wait for Garfield to leave, you wait for Gargamel to leave, and you come to the Smurfs and you go, oh my God, let's talk about resiliency. Like, how can we empower them to like fortify their mushrooms so that they're not, and we focus, and no one ever goes to the damn castle on the hill, and it's like, what the hell is wrong with you, Gargamel? Why are you stomping castles? You want to leave
Right.
these
To the
people alone?
source. Go to the source.
Right, and that seems preposterous to us by and large. But the question that I was thinking about when you were mentioning the standard of beauty and like the blonde hair, blue eyed obsession is that, so that's the part of the social part of child rearing that we were kind of discussing before, and like, if that's what's beautiful, especially for your young lady that's coming up.
Which is why
Like,
it's like
yeah.
the intensity, like, to, okay, we got to get to Africa because she got to be around not just some black people, but some dark skinned black people.
So
people that
you
she,
plan to move to Africa?
Yes.
To the continent?
Yes.
Which was your long-term goal?
Yes.
In the first place?
Yes. So that she can be around people that she can identify, people who have hair like hers, you know. Because I will say, although her, like the Ghan, that's like the kindergarten, that she attends, the Ghanaian, the teacher, she's from Yemen. By and large, Yemenite people, they self-identify as black. And like, yeah, well, because growing up in Israeli society, that's what they were called. They were called Kushi, which is the Israeli equivalent of nigger.
But are they black?
You know, some of them, I call them mulattoes. You know, like some of them can look like me, you know, and have kinky hair. And then some of them can look like, you know, Mariah Carey.
But Yemen is a nation. But what is their ethnicity or their actual race? Because like I mean, that's a phenotype and that's genetic. So like I mean I could move to Yemen. I'm for sure, but I can move to China. I'm still. You know what I'm saying?
But here's the thing about.
But, let me make that point though. But growing up, like I said, in an Israeli society where you know they're considered black and that's what they're called. You know.
Because they're more black by and large, or let me say more black. They're darker with kinky hair and black features. So they have a black phenotype.
Right.
Present. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So you know, so they.
No, Yemen. You people from Yemen, because
Yemeni is not what they call a uniform society. There's a lot of African migrants there, especially coming from the Horn of Africa. So it's a mixed society. You'll find that when you go to the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, even Mexico, in those societies, they have those same racial hierarchies. So a Yemeni who's black in Israel could be Arab or even white in Yemen.
And I guess
A
for me, it's
Hispanic
less about
who is a Latinx or Hispanic oppressed person here in the United States, once they go back to Honduras, they're white. And so the white Hondurans oppress the black Hondurans and the native Hondurans, the white, the you know, so.
But perception is very different from what is. Like, I'm black.
Right.
And so I could go and maybe maybe they'd call me something else somewhere else. But
Yemenis are Arabs or Persians.
They are, as I said,
Asians,
within the context of Israeli society.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right. So,
I'm back.
Right.
So she's
if you see a black Yemeni, more likely than not, if they have been in Yemeni, their roots probably go back to the Sudan or Somalia or something like that. But their parents migrated there. So if you see like, I was working with 2 Cubans, and one Cuban was obviously black, and one Cuban was obviously European descent, a conquistador. And when they were in Cuba, it was white and black, and they very much understood that. But when they came to live in Queens, where I knew them in Queens, then they were Cubans, and they refused to be. I'm like, so you're black? No, I'm Cuban. But if I put them both back on a plane to Cuba, immediately stepping off the plane, it'd be a white man and a black man. But in the United States, they're Cuban. So in Yemeni, in Israel, we're Yemeni or we're black, because somebody got to.
Somebody got to be the nigga.
Right. That's what Dick Gregory was saying. Somebody got to be the nigga. And when the white man doesn't have a nigga available, he will promptly turn somebody. You go to Europe, all white communities. The Roma people are the niggas. And the Roma gypsies are the default niggas of Europe, until like black African migrants or Asian migrants come. Then the Roma people start acting white, calling black people.
But see, I think that's the Pan-Africanist in me that says, you know, whether I'm Roma, whether I'm, you know, Japanese, whether I'm, you know, from the island of Hawaii, and you know, whatever I am, you don't get to determine externally what I'm going to be, how I identify, how I project, or how I internalize. And so all of this, that's why I have such a difficult time with the term Latina, because, you know, these games that people play, like there's only one reality. And we
Right.
can pretend like these different people for their political agendas or whatever are going to deem you this or that, if thus or so, and you can play those games if you want to.
Oh, they definitely
But-
will play those games.
Yeah,
It's
but-
like
but
in
you don't have
Palestine
to
right now.
participate.
Palestine is under universal repression. But the white Palestinians, the Arab Palestinians discriminate against the black African
Right.
Oh,
Palestinians.
that's real.
Exactly.
So, I mean.
But so an African person can say I'm Palestinian, they can say I'm African. It would behoove them to choose the latter.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
But as people cross borders and the tone and the manifestation, like here in the United States, is obviously racist, but it's more covert or institutional racism. Whereas you said you got to Israel and you saw overt racism. In fact, when Trump was elected to office, one of the first things I tweeted out was, I'm relieved that there's an overt racist in the White House.
Right. Because at least you know where people stand.
Right.
And so, and from that perspective, you know, I appreciate Israelis far more than I do Americans.
Right,
'cause
which
I don't have
seems
to guess.
ironic, but some
I don't have
people
to guess
like
where they're coming
the
from.
subtle racism. They prefer
I
it
love
to be
overt
buried.
racism. That's my
Absolutely.
favorite.
Absolutely.
Right. So, like I said, Trump, it's easier to criticize the government and mobilize people. No, let me not say mobilize, but definitely it's easier and safer to criticize the government, the federal government under Trump than it was under Obama. I got a lot of hate and animosity criticizing the exact same policies of imperialism, neglect of black people and black interests, and mass deportations, and same things were going on under Obama. And I was called everything from I'm jealous of Obama's
hater. He was a
success,
hater.
a hater, to a traitor, to some people would even say that I'm a black man. I'm not actually a black man. I'm a white person on social media pretending to be black
yeah.
because of my staunch ongoing criticism of the Obama administration. So now I don't get that anymore. Now I'm officially black again when I say the exact same things about the Trump administration.
It's interesting in terms of like criticizing government, because that's something that, you know, in Israel it really doesn't exist. Like here you have what it's like, you know, considered the political left.
Right.
And even, you know, progressives, even though they don't get the type of exposure, you know, in terms of like, you know, media exposure and what have you, it exists. In Israeli society, that doesn't exist at all. Like we have no left at all. There's like the right, you know, and then like the extreme right.
Actually, there's no left in the United States either. Obama was a far right.
I mean, I think that they do exist. I mean, you had Jill Stein and
Jill Stein has never taken power.
but I'm saying that
You have Gabor.
but that ideology it exists.
But
I mean,
you
you're
have
able to turn
Elon-
on. You're able to turn on
In
democracy
Israel,
now.
there are Elon Pepe, the son of the IDF general, who is a staunch critic of Israel, and then you have a lot of Jews abroad, anti-Israeli Jews.
Right, I'm saying within
And-
the Israeli context and within Israeli media, you don't see that.
You don't see that in the mainstream media here either. You said Democracy Now! You don't see
Yeah,
that.
that's I'm saying, but there's no alternative. The only thing that exists in Israel is a website called like 972. Okay, that's where you go like if you want to, you know, see progressive news. But I mean, and even like I'm saying within Israeli society at large, for example, if you go to a dinner party, okay, you can run into someone who holds progressive views,
Right.
and you guys can run into people who have opposing views, and like you can freely express that,
Right.
okay, and like those are your opinions, those are your views. I'm saying to hold leftist or progressive views in Israeli society is extremely taboo. It is not something that people openly talk about. And I have experienced that. That's how I know this. People that I consider to be liberal, when I started talking about, you know, and expressing my views, they were like, "Oh, I didn't know that you held such harsh views," and "Oh, wow, you know." And it's like, but I thought that you know, were on the political left as well. But it doesn't exist. It's a taboo. Even like we were talking in the car about, you know, serving in the military, and I feel like that part of that contributes to that mentality, because military service is compulsory in Israel. I think like that's like the one thing that like the entire like nation has to rally around, because everybody has to serve in the military.
Right.
You know, it's not like here,
even women.
even
Yeah.
women.
Right.
Well, except for the religious. The religious
The
people
Orthodox.
are the only ones.
Well, everybody's religious.
You know,
It's a theocracy,
it is a theocracy.
but
It is a
the
theocracy,
Orthodox don't
but,
have to.
Yeah, but the
to-
Orthodox, yeah. Um,
But that used to be in the United States when they had the draft. Like the Quakers were exempt,
mhm.
but the Orthodox have to provide support. Like they can work as medics and things like that here in the states. I don't know if that's for the Orthodox Jews, but they could join them. They wouldn't be enlisted, but they would obligate themselves to perform support services for the military.
Now, certain religious sects in Israel do that, but not the Orthodox. Um, the ones that we call them the curly Qs, the ones that wear the
Yeah.
black hat.
Yeah,
The
we had them
Hasidim-
in
the Hasidim- what do you call it?
Hasidic.
the Hasidic
Hasidic-
Jews
yeah.
there
What's
in
the plural?
Hasidim.
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 Okay, sorry, we don't have the Yiddish accent down just yet. I'm working on it.
Hasidim.
So yeah, but they have a large community in Brooklyn Heights
Yeah.
and Williamsburg
Yeah.
and Crown Heights.
And you know what's it's crazy because when you go to the American embassy, you see so many of them, and it's crazy because it's like they also have dual citizenship, and it's so many of them, these Orthodox Jews that like they live in Brooklyn and and like even like in certain parts of Los Angeles, and they speak no English. Like
Well,
none.
they actually in that, as in all cults, they isolate their memberships in order to maintain their memberships. There's a good documentary, actually, it was just made available on Netflix a few weeks ago, talking about people who have escaped the community.
Mhm.
And 90% of the people who leave the repressive community return because they have no skills.
Mm-hmm.
They can't read, they don't speak the language, even though you grow up born and raised in the United States and don't speak English. You speak Yiddish, and so the leadership isolate and exploits them. I remember when we were members of the Park Slope Food Co-op, and Hasidic Jews would come in there and buy up the whole store, and they pay all with food stamps,
Mhm.
And so
And
they're all
they had
public
housing
assistance
vouchers for property that their
for private
husbands,
property,
their
right?
the religious husbands held, but they were not married in terms of the state. And it was
Right.
all of these manipulations.
And I'm sorry. And Rikers Island is full of Hasidic
Yeah.
Jewish prisoners.
Oh, word?
Yeah, when I went
Really?
they just engage in so much crime.
No, I know they do,
Yeah,
but
but
the fact
that's
that
they're
they're
prosecuted.
exactly
Right.
that's
No,
my surprise.
See, Rikers Island is a holding cell. Rikers Island is where you go while you await trial. And then if you're convicted and your sentence is a year or less, you stay in Rikers Island. If you get a year or more, they send you upstate.
Mm.
So they weren't often convicted. They were very
Okay.
frequently arrested,
Okay, but convicted is another
but
thing.
very infrequently convicted from what I saw. And then
Yeah,
the
that's
Village
no
Voice used
surprise.
to do a lot of articles on the community. One of the ones that stood out was how the rabbi got AIDS,
Mhm.
because a lot of Hasidic
Yeah.
Jews would go. They'd still have your curly cues, as you call them, but they put on a tracksuit and a baseball cap and head to the Lower West Side.
For
That's where
prostitution.
the male prostitutes.
Mhm.
And then the rabbis and the members of the communities would go there, and then they'd come back to their community with their wives. And it's across Israeli, they have this demographic issue where they think there aren't enough Jews in the world, so they encourage reproduction.
Yeah, it's
Very
definitely encouraging
aggressive.
Israel. In fact, when you every time that you have a child in Israel, you're given funds from the state of Israel.
If you're white,
Yes, well, not if you're white, but if you have Israeli citizenship.
if you're white.
I'm not white, and I received it as well. So it's if you have.
What do you
Israeli
But-
get? How much do you get in terms of American dollars?
In terms of American dollars, I want to say it's like around $500, something like that.
Oh.
You gonna scoff at $500? I didn't know you was like.
I
Are you
mean-
hiding money from me? You can scoff at $500.
I would take it, but I thought it was like, here's a little something, like a for real package that could like help you set that kid up
No, like I said, it's an encouragement.
Mhm.
For
to reproduce.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Before we escaped, I mean, you all were telling some truths about Jewish people, and you were and that was like side by side with your comments that it can be extremely taboo to kind of speak in a progressive way, i.e., tell the truth
Mhm.
about what's going on. And even just hearing us talk about the Hasidic Jewish population in Brooklyn and some of the ways that they would finesse the system and really exploit the system, is that considered, anti-Semitic, to say those
Oh,
things?
absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
That's,
I mean,
but
like,
that's the
even
case here too. I was just going to draw that parallel because here,
because I've been, by coworkers of mine, Nikki, you can't say that. You're Jewish too. That's anti-Semitic. It's like I'm not. This isn't anti-Semitism. I'm speaking truth to the reality.
that's the thing.
You
So
know,
often truth is
everything.
confused with slander.
Exactly.
And it's just the way that we were sitting here, because I sometimes, position myself. I try to be good, I got a job, so I think to myself
Got kids to
sometimes,
feed.
got kids. I think to myself sometimes, well, like if my boss heard this, what would he think or she think? I got multiple people that I probably got to ask to. So what would they, and I'm thinking, well, I didn't lie. I'm telling the truth about a thing. And so often I read a book called Flawless Consulting by this guy named Block, and in one of the articles it said how in the workplace truth telling can become a liability. And so I was just thinking about how you said it was so taboo in Israel, but it's so taboo here to say the truth about anything, most specifically the Jewish population, because now you're anti-Semitic. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so what did I say that disparaged or showed some prejudgment?
Right.
Or was it just highlighting some facts, realities that are now considered slander? Like, how do you finesse that?
And it's something because I have to give it to them. That's something that they've been very effective at doing, as perpetrating this myth, this world myth that they are the oppressed of the world. And that's real. I mean, they wholeheartedly believe that. And
They're
it's something,
indoctrinated into it.
there's something that is embedded within, the Jewish identity, and it's something because they don't run from or lament the fact that that they're the oppressed of the world, that everybody hates the Jews. It's something that they embrace,
Yes. Yes.
and they embrace it, and
The
from
victim
that,
mentality.
but they do. They're not like black people here in America. Oh, stop playing the victim card. Empower yourself. No, they fully embrace it. Oh, we are the oppressed of the world.
You know
Everybody
why?
hates Jews. You know what? And they
Because then there's a debt to be paid.
exactly, and they are, and they're getting
There's
paid.
a debt that has been paid
And
a
will continue
million
and that
times
is
over.
being
Be
paid.
paid.
That is being paid.
And will continue to be paid.
Okay.
The Holocaust industry, written by Norman Finkelstein, talks about
Right,
billions
right.
of dollars. And every couple of years there's a major Holocaust movie that gets all the Oscars. So,
I mean, they pimp that
Schindler's
to the
List,
fullest.
The Pianist, yeah.
And then when you holler anti-African, in the myriad of ways that things are actually anti-African, not just for play, for that victimization, for that sympathy, for that debt accumulation, but for the real ways in which society is set up, propaganda, media, mind control on the Noam Chomskyist level, actually anti-African. Oh, calm down.
But can I
Right,
can I
right.
say something?
And no, can you hold that? Put a pin in it, please. It's something that because I may lose it. Okay.
Okay, go for it.
It's something that you should say that because, like on the way over here on the plane, I ran into two Jewish youth. They were teenagers, and they were going to Phoenix, Arizona, to participate in this program. It's an international program, and so teenagers were coming from all over the world, from China, from Europe. Because they made the point that all of the other high school students, that they were able to travel to Phoenix like by themselves. They didn't have to have a chaperone, but because they're from Israel, that they had to have a chaperone because of the fear that they might be harmed, of anti-Semitism. Somebody might want to harm them, and it's such a fallacy. And I said to them, I said, first of all, when people look at you, they don't even know what you are.
It's not a fallacy, it's a tactic.
You
That's
look
right.
like.
How do you keep Zionism alive and well in future generations?
Not only
if you
that,
don't
not
feel
only that, European culture has a long history of Jew baiting that goes back to the czars of Russia. It even goes back to the Roman emperor. And so they somebody got to need a nigger or the whole scapegoat culture. when rulers in Europe would squander the resources, mismanage the resources, overtax the people, and create unsanitary and filthy conditions, they needed somebody to blame. So there's two groups that would always be the people who poisoned the well, who are stealing babies, who refuse to work and languish around, who swindle you out of your money and run scams. That was the Jews and the Roma. And King Ferdinand and other Spanish monarchs, back when the Spanish were the top white people, the Spanish and the Portugal. That's why you have Latin America all speak Spanish and Brazil speaks Portuguese, because they got in the colonization game long before the British and
On the
the French.
front end.
So there were times where they said, gather all the Jews and kick them out of town and let's take their money. And then they would pass laws saying, well, Europe used to be called Christendom. And Christendom was Jesus Christ. Who killed Christ? The Jews.
The Jews.
And so the Jew baiting created this certain identity amongst the Ashkenazi, is pronounced in the West. How do you say
Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazi? That's pretty much how I said it right. I didn't say it right.
It's okay.
So, and then black people have adopted that. Farrakhan and many other black conspiracy theorists, right, have adopted. I see certain things you can't say over here and certain things you can't say over there. But yeah, Farrakhan man, the man called Farrakhan man.
Living in his mansion.
The
in
con
Hyde
man.
Park.
She saw his house.
Yeah, and I'm mad. He got a waterfall in his front yard.
So
After all the work he's done for us,
For who?
all the freedom he's secured for us, all the fighting and struggling and the risk he's
What
faced
fighting
on
is
behalf
fighting?
of black people, he don't deserve a mansion with a waterfall
Hell
and
no.
24-hour
Not until we all got a
security
mansion.
He killed
with an elevator in it.
Okay.
This is talking about the Jews here.
Okay, let's stay on topic.
Anyway, this is an aspect of European culture and tradition. Like literally this and black people have adopted the white Western rhetoric about the Jews control the media. In the United States, there's a terminology amongst the white called the ZOG, Zionist Occupied Government, where black people in the United States really believe that the Jews in Israel control the United States, as opposed to the other way around.
I don't know.
You're not over there controlling the United States?
That's a difficult one for me because I don't listen. From what I have observed, Israeli leadership and especially Benjamin Netanyahu, I mean, they scoff at what I mean. I don't think that that the United States is controlling. I mean, if anybody's, I would say that America is.
America is Israel's punk?
Absolutely.
Israel runs the United States.
I would. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would say that they run the United States, but I'm saying that I don't think that the U.S. has a leash on Israel.
What's the leverage? Why would the U.S. want that? Why would the U.S. capitulate to Israel? What does Israel have over the United States that would force them into that position?
I mean, I think that's the $20 million question.
It's very convenient for the United States to be able to say, but go on. This is
from what I have, my own personal assessment, I think that that Israel is in a strategic location globally, and so that's the only thing that I could come up with, because I mean.
But the U.S. put them there, in their recognition. Who was that? I always get the president wrong. In the 50s, that said yes, I recognize this.
Truman.
Truman. So I mean, how could it fear its own child, the United States?
It doesn't. But again.
I
There
don't
is a
think
long
that
history of Russian czars, Roman emperors, British imperialists, and Spanish and Portuguese kings who have told their citizens, it's not me, I'm just a benevolent ruler doing my best. It's these insidious Jews who are robbing the banks, robbing the coffers, and cheating, swindling the nation, poisoning and salting the earth, and stealing your babies and killing babies for Passover. This is a long dance between Europeans.
Yeah, I think it's a relationship that they both benefit from.
Yes, this is European tribalism. And we say if it's white people, then it's the world. If white people are doing it, then it's the human reality. So a lot of black people adopt that same thing. Yeah, the Jews run everything. The Jews, they're people that say that the Jews are the ones that took hip hop. So they don't say white people.
Mhm.
Or they believe that Jews are the kings or the rulers of all whites. And then you got the Rothschilds. And they say that the Rockefeller banks are, and all the media is controlled by the Jews. But then when you take a sober political and historical analysis,
Mhm.
you find that there are many factions of power that are both divergent and cooperating within the Western power structure.
Mhm.
It's not a uniform, and there's no one seat of power. And the Jews are actually play a role in that, but their
Right.
role is often overinflated to the benefit. So you got black people. There's this guy named what's the who the liberal billionaire. Uh,
A
what's his
liberal billionaire? Isn't that
Yeah,
an
it's a
oxymoron?
liberal billionaire Jewish guy that everybody talks about. Goodness. He finances Democracy Now! He puts up money for
Oh, I
Democracy
bet.
Now! And many progressive
I don't know
websites.
who this is.
Neither do I.
Oh my God, it's killing me. Internet, what's that guy's name? They always talk about him. And
Are you talking about Soros?
George Soros. Oh my God, you
Okay.
do know.
I mean,
Like
yeah,
everybody knows George Soros and the money, George Soros money, and he finances the Green Party. He finances and the Soros, and you work in anything you say that's liberal or progressive, it's George Soros. And the many Christian evangelical billionaires, the many Saudi oligarchical billionaires, Islamic billionaires, the many secular atheist billionaires, they never say anything about him. But George Soros
Mhm.
is the one.
Mhm.
So when you find a Jew who's in a position, people were like, oh, that guy, he's Jewish. I knew Jews run everything.
Mhm.
But the Koch brothers, who have way more influence over U.S. Political policy, and not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level,
Mhm.
through ALEC. You very seldom hear them talk about the Koch brothers, because Koch brothers, how could they be part of some large conspiracy when they're Christians?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
these are Christian billionaires, so all they want to do is work hard, hire people, and pay them fair wages. But the Jewish billionaires, they have some insidious world global domination agenda.
Mhm.
So that Jew-baiting culture has infected the black conscious and the black community overall. I know there's people mad right now that I'm not saying Jews don't run everything and don't run the United States economy.
Mhm.
Because Israel is the bagman for the U.S.
Mhm.
Israel is able to violate international law, and then the United States gets to play the police of the world, the upstanding, dignified nation, and Israel does the dirt dictated by the United States, and Israel is well rewarded.
For doing that, Dirty, for being the head buster.
And people don't remember, back in the early 90s, everybody thought that Japan was going to take over America, and the Japan corporations, Japanese are buying up real estate all over the West Coast, and now nobody talks about the threat that Japan poses, and the pending, and now the Chinese are about to take over the world, and so it's hysteria. It's what I was telling you about the siege mentality.
Mhm.
Israel has a siege culture. There is no such thing as Israeli culture. It's the fundamental siege mentality.
Mhm.
Because Israel, you got Ukrainian Jews, Yugoslavian Jews, French Jews,
Mhm.
British Jews, American, Afro-American, expat, converted Jews, Brazilian Jews, Ethiopian, Beta Israel Jews. So what is Israel? I mean, come on. What is Israeli culture? You know, Israel is a settler colony. Theodor Herzl, the founder of the theocracy, was an atheist and many Zionists cooperated with Nazis. And like you said, they have an obsession.
Yeah.
So when you say Israeli culture, what really ties the nation of Israel together is this siege mentality. And you never find white people more unified when they believe they're under attack from the blacks, from the Mexicans, the terrorists. They're all coming. That's why the U.S. media keeps telling white America, you're under attack. Black people are going to the Cadillac dealership with food stamps, buying Cadillacs, eating caviar and steaks on food stamps, so that white people feel my hard-working tax dollars go to pay for black people to live like Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey.
Mhm.
You know, so it's that same siege mentality. That's the only thing I see holding Israel together as a nation.
And like I said, the fact that the idea that they're the oppressed of the world. I mean, I'm telling you the going back to what you're saying about the Holocaust industry. I mean, for almost the entire month of May is dedicated towards commemorating the Holocaust and Israel's fallen soldiers and.
Isn't that the same month of the Nakba?
Of the Nakba?
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same month. I don't. I could be
Because I know there's
mistaken.
some, like Israeli Independence Day coincides with the Nakba.
With the Nakba.
Yeah, I
Uh,
heard you.
Anyways, as I was saying, um, on Holocaust Memorial Day, Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron, um, when you turn on the TV, that's all you can see is Holocaust propaganda. I mean, I don't care if you have cable television, whatever. If you turn on your television, that's the only thing that is allowed to be broadcast um, over the air. So this idea, it's like they want to continually brainwash the people and continuously, embed that in their minds that, that we are the world's oppressed, that everyone is against us. Um, and the people, they believe that. And they govern themselves from that, imagined reality.
Mm. So, but all in all, with all the things that we've discussed, and there's so much more, so many layers, you do think, you don't regret your move to Israel? You think it was a better place to birth and raise black children than the United States?
I think that the our experience, our current reality, I think that it was better. I can't speak for black people as a collective. I would not say that. I definitely would not advocate for black people to start moving to Israel. That is not my position at all, and I want to make that emphatically clear. That is not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have had an experience that was better than I feel like what my children could have experienced here had we stayed in the United States.
Here's a tough question, and I know it's tough before I ask it. So I think about, and I asked a version of this to you earlier today. I think about the nuanced ways in which children sew together the fabric of their kind of existential reality. Like, this is who I am as a person. This is what I like, what I don't like. As they're forming preferences romantically, as they're understanding notions of fraternity and brotherhood, as they're looking towards, their place on the world stage, developing their identities, despite our best efforts as parents to impart a thing through conversation and even example, their larger social networks and greater society oftentimes have a much greater impact on that part. And so as I try to put myself in your shoes and think, could I raise my sons in Israel? It's a resounding hell no because of that. And I'm just wondering how you situate that in your mind with regards to those kind of ethereal influences and direct influences on their personhood as black men. Knowing you, I know what your hopes are for them in terms of what they will mean to black people in the world. I believe that we share that desire. How do you make their current location and the fact that there are so few black people and that they don't have those interactions, how do you jive all of that?
So that's a question that I've been asked several times by like black people here in the States that I'm close to. I can say that that's something like a sense of not just blackness, but Africanness. My husband and I have like gone to great lengths to instill that within our children, and I can see that our works, like that it has manifested in them. At this juncture in time, I can't say what will be in 5 years, 10 years, whatever. But I can see that they have a strong sense of who they are as African people in the world. They're very, very conscientious of that. And I often, I don't know, I think that a lot of times when we, because I grew up in a predominantly white environment. I think a lot of times, and especially if you do the work that is required with teaching and educating your children, a lot of times I think that the white people can be a greater influence in turning our children to the struggle than we can, because they see it.
That's fair.
They see it. They see them for who they are and what they are. And they hold no illusions, and we have these types of conversations on a regular. They're very conscientious about it. They're very conscientious about their blackness. Even my 5-year-old daughter, she said that she was at Ghana, and a little white girl told her that the white was beautiful, and she said, "Well, my Ima loves black." So she's very, very conscientious and aware of it, of the difference. You know, she speaks about it. You know.
Do you fear any kind of underlying preference for whiteness that might come as a side effect, an unintended side effect of being steeped in that kind of culture for so long?
It was a concern of mine, but I haven't seen that in my children. In fact, I would say that they they can be like a little like extreme, like
Mm-hmm.
just for example, we were driving down the street, and so Libby was like, "That's my daughter." She was like, "Ah, you might look at the black woman. She's beautiful." Um, and so Aryeh, he was like, "No, she's not. She's not beautiful." Um, and Libby was like, "Ema, you know, Aryeh said that a black woman wasn't beautiful, you know." And so Aryeh was like, "Well, just because she's black, that doesn't mean she's beautiful, you know." Um, so I mean, it's something that they're very conscientious of, and they're very pro-black. They're very much steeped in their, you know, their identity as African people. Like I said, I don't know what that will be, how that will, you know, manifest in 5, 10 years. I hope that they will stay that way. My children have a strong desire to live in Africa. They have a strong desire to be around black people. People, even when Amitai was here, that was one of the reasons why he wanted to stay here in the beginning, is because he said, I never felt so much, felt so free to be myself than I do now. And that was because he was around all black people.
But okay, well, in my thought, do you anticipate? What do you expect from living in Africa when your family moves to the African continent? What do you expect there that you're not getting? What are your expectations?
Well, one of the things that, not just like being around people that look like you, that, you know, identify with you. I think that it's important that, I mean, because living in Israel, it's like, as a black person, you're always otherized. I mean, and there's a certain, you know, because I have friends, they're African Americans that live in Tanzania and Kenya. So there's that somewhat does still exist, you know, on the continent, you know, that you're not a, you know, but it's still, there's a difference, as opposed to the treatment that you receive, you know, in Israel or in a society, you know, a greater society that's predominantly white. So those are the expectations that I have. I don't have, I expect that, you know, my children won't be made fun of because they have, you know, nappy hair. My children won't see black skin as something that's, you know, an anomaly. You know,
They don't know about the hair processing and skin bleaching industries and practices on the continent,
I mean, yeah,
especially in places like Ghana,
right,
Senegal.
okay, that does exist. From what I know from the research that we have conducted and the areas that we are looking into, those types of things they're not as strong as they are like in Ghana.
What are your political kind of aspirations for your move? Like, do you have a Pan-Africanist kind of activist goals or
You mean in terms of like linking up like with another type of organization?
yeah, like what would your best wishes be for your, if you have any, or if that's kind of where you're coming from, for your political opportunities once you arrive, if any? What would you say that?
I mean, I'm hoping, you know, to see that manifested, you know, once we relocate there. There are people, like I said, that we're in contact with right now. And so, you know, we hope to be doing work with them. For me, in terms of, you know, Pan-Africanism, I think that a lot of times I think we miss the mark because we don't focus enough on like the nucleus in terms of, you know, promoting and Pan-Africanism within our home. that's my strongest focus right now, because I feel like if I can, embed that mentality, that ideology in my children, then they can go out, and perpetuate that. So that's my personal vision.
You don't think there might be some risk because just
There's
being
always risk.
well in terms of their affinity for blackness and their black pride,
Hmm.
but lacking a material or daily interaction and experience. Because I can
With
tell
you
you,
saying with the black people.
yeah, it might be easier to love black from a distance and love being black isolated
Hmm. As
as
opposed
a
to being.
black, as opposed to being embedded in the community.
Hmm.
Um, I can't really speak. I was raised in a black community my entire life. I've
Hmm.
lived in Kansas City. I mean, extended period. I spent extended periods of time in Kansas City, New York, and Chicago, but it's always been in the black community. And I'm all for pro blackness and black pride, but I do interact with a lot of black people. Because I don't know if you were reading what I was saying about the HBCUs
Hmm.
and how a lot of black people who grew up in, because I have relatives that grew up in predominantly white environments and went to HBCUs
Right. That was why I chose the
black
HBCU.
for the black experience. And the moment they walked across and got their diploma, they ran with their asses on fire back to their white communities
Okay.
because they got a taste of, they had an idea of what it was to be black and be amongst black people, and then they had the reality of what it is to be black.
And I think that
amongst
depends
black
on the individual.
Mm.
I mean, like I said, I grew up in a predominantly white environment as well.
Right.
Um, and that was why I chose the HBCU. I mean, but even after I graduated, I still had that desire to be around black people. I've always, and I mean, and we, it can be problematic being around our people. I mean, because I mean of our history, that's a reality.
Well, I've
But
never,
I've always
I
felt
don't
that
think it's a problem, but a lot of times the being face to face with the reality
it can be difficult
what helps me to desire to be among and to sustain among my people is having a historical understanding of our behaviors and who and why and what we do, putting it always in proper
historical context. Exactly, the reason why we behave the way that we do.
Right. And why they behave the way they behave, which is why I don't want to live around them and could never live around them, even in their most pristine communities. And I'm not about to get behind it in an affluent white community or try to move to the Gold Coast.
And I think the idea of just running, um, I'm not with it. Like I don't think that's what you're doing. I think that people should stand where they stand. Like where, if you're like, look, my goal has always been African. It took me a while to get there, but I'm gonna get there, and when I do, that's where I'm gonna stand. Because I think that there's a beauty um, in standing tall, and fighting the good fight wherever you are. And so I don't ever want to go to a place and escape of a thing. I want to go there intentionally to design a thing.
Hmm.
And I think that we focus so much on other people's designs that it's difficult for us to remember our own.
Hmm.
And so we get swept with the tide and we get pushed thus and so, and we're analyzing what other people want, think, and believe. When in reality, I say this all the time, if you know a single racist thing, you know them all. If you know a single historically brutal thing, you know them all. And so with that information, it becomes very easy to form a strategic plan and think long game. And when you're doing that, you can move through these kinds of situations. I had mentioned to a friend of mine, in my education, the term microaggression comes up quite a bit. And I'm like, I just don't get it. Like, people feel these constraints and confines. I don't feel them.
Hmm.
There's racism all around me. I don't hear it.
Hmm.
I mean, there's certain things that I have to intentionally focus on, like The Handmaid's Tale, which is like bugging me out right now. It's like that's my shtick right now.
Hmm.
But I have to like intentionally focus and force myself into a thing in order for it to even scathe me at all. Because when you look at the grand picture, right? When you look at the whole picture of it all and what needs to be done for us, for the whales, for the fish, for the air,
For the phytoplasm.
right, for the damn permafrost, where they about to get jiggy with a whole bunch of bacteria that we haven't seen for millions of years. Like when you factor it all in together in the ecosystem of our existence, a lot of this other stuff, like, oh, this person feels this way towards me. I'm like, okay, I don't give a shit. I don't care about how this individual feels about me. I don't care about, I care about the architecture of myself and my comrades, like those people who I see as other Pan Africanists who align with a shared kind of vision for the world, our vision that we will impose and not what will be imposed on us. Because that to me just seems to be a more strategic focus. I guess that's what I hear. Sometimes I get nauseated by the minutia of like all of these things. And I'm like, okay, we have to discuss it. We have to understand it. Without these understandings, there could be no strategy. But that's how it feels, especially when we're talking about migrations. Like the migration feels like it should be like an intentional push and not necessarily a retreat.
Okay, so when we talk about that, I think, and this is where I am at this juncture in time, I think that we have to start looking at dismantling the white institutions that exist inside of our minds first. I think that that's like the first battlefront, because what I have observed, and I mean, like I was sharing with you, I was a member of NBUF, back when I was in college. And even within the conscious community, there are still so many mental barriers, that we have to break down. When you start talking about Pan-Africanism, especially creating a vision, of something other than what we, the current paradigm. Many of us, even within the conscious community, because of our own boogeymen, that exists inside of our minds, because of our experience, as an oppressed people, we don't even know how to maintain healthy relationships with one another. And so, as Dr. Amos Wilson says, all of this, is undergirded, this white domination is undergirded by us being outside of our minds, outside of our African minds. So I think that's something that we first have to deal with and reconnect to that, because we don't even know, what it means to be African. We don't know what it means to be a sister to another sister, what it means to be, a comrade.
That's right.
I think we have to start there.
For sure.
That's why, as I said to you, a lot of my emphasis is on, my children, and doing the work there first, because I think that's where it starts first,
Well, we're going to be wrapping up. We have less than 5 minutes. Well, it's just my take on terms of Africans moving abroad, or black people moving there, or Africans moving here, is that there's no sanctuary for black people anywhere on earth. I don't care if you went to the Arctic, an isolated Arctic sanctuary. There's still the pollution and ecological disruption. There's no place where you can go to be free of Western or white aggression, and even within or outside the United States. So I would encourage any African to move anywhere they so desire, as long as they understand that they still have to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of their people. That's kind of my conclusion. I mean, I've been invited, and people say, oh, you hate America so much, why don't you move to Africa and this and that? And I've had some viable opportunities and invitations to move to certain parts of Africa, but it always rings strong in my mind that Dr. Clark, who also visited every continent of Africa except for South Africa because it was still under apartheid. When he passed, he said he'd never set foot on apartheid, but every other country in Africa he visited, he would often get the same question, like, why don't you just move to Africa? You're an African scholar, you're beloved in Africa, and you come here to America to struggle. And he said, if you can't run a candy store in Harlem, how are you going to operate an African economy?
And I agree with that, but I don't think that should stop us from having a desire to move to the motherland.
Well, desires versus, again,
the struggle,
my initial statement,
the struggle
that was my initial statement, where I said anywhere you think you can move for a struggle. I was talking about my personal, why I didn't take advantage of those opportunities. I wasn't talking about anyone else. But I'm just saying that I think that the African diaspora needs to become an asset and a formal ally of the African continent. Because I think that would better speak to strengthening Africa, and which is equally important as African empowerment, is uh, subverting capitalism, subverting Western imperialism.
Mhm.
Because even if Africa was a utopia, again, the life-sustaining capacity of the earth is being destroyed.
Right, the tentacles of
Right.
global white domination
Exactly.
is still.
So we don't want, in that sense. So, but does anyone else have any closing statements? We have 2 minutes. So I'll give you a minute to closing statements. And again, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and travel safely. And I look forward to our ongoing exchange and mutual uh, friendship. But go on before you head back to
And
Is It
princess
Real?
outfits from her daughter.
Right.
My favorite part.
So anything you want to leave Chirac and the rest of your brothers and sisters of the diaspora with before you head back to Is It Real?
No, I thank you for having me on the show. It's been a pretty pleasant experience being here in Chirac. I had my little negative experiences as well, but for the most part, it's been pleasurable.
You got your hair did. It looks nice.
Yeah, I got my hair did,
Right. So
which that in and of itself, that was a whole negative experience as well.
you got you
Which
put
didn't stop her
African.
from styling on it though.
Any closing comments, Erica?
I'm grateful to have had this conversation and to get some perspective on a thing that I have had questions about for a long time. I respect your push towards Africa. I respect what you're designing for your family, and I appreciate your being forthcoming and sharing your information unapologetically and unafraid, which is not always the case.
Thank you.
And shout out to King Dita and Dr. Royster for hosting us for that dinner party last night.
And
As a
hosting me in their
send-off.
house.
Right, yes, and hosting
I
in
just
the house.
took over the house.
And hooking us up with some coconut coffee. Did you get some of the coconut coffee?
Even though I'm sick, I snuck a sip of yours in the car. You didn't know.
Oh.
Now you're gonna pass out.
Well, no, after that I gave it to the boys. I saw you do that and I didn't touch it. So, this is Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 6080. You can find this show archived at DialloKenyatta.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back Friday morning.
I'm getting messages from people. Are you on the Diallo Kenyatta show? Y'all, you've given me my 15 minutes of fame.
I don't know how I did it. Can we still hear this?
I had a close.